Would you please join me in celebrating the heritage singers once again, the legacy singers. It almost felt like a Sunday morning. So grateful to be here. I just have a few moments to share with you on today. And Mr. Mayor, we thank you for the invite to share on such a significant occasion. My inspiration has come from the caption you find in your printed bulletin, a story we must tell and retell. As many of us know, long before the advent of written literature, printing presses, telegrams, postal services, emails, TMs, IMs, tweets, Skype, FaceTime, Facebook, iPhone, iPod, iPads, and now Instagrams, etc., etc. Believe it or not, people actually spoke to one another. People actually spoke face to face. They told stories. By a process sociologists call oral transmission, stories about the good, stories about the bad, stories about the ugly facts of our human existence were passed along from generation to generation. Stories are powerful. This story that we have come to celebrate today is a very powerful story. It was Alex Haley who one day stumbled upon a similar story of his great-great-great-grandfather, who at the tender age of 16 was snatched from his Mandinka tribe of Jufura in Gambia, West Africa. It is a story about a young man who was transported for 3 terrifying months in the hull of a slave ship to Annapolis, Maryland, where in 1767 he was sold for $850 to John Waller of Spotsylvania, Virginia. Many of us know Mr. Haley's ancestor by name, Kunta Kinte. Less than 200 years later, Martin Luther King Jr. marched to the move of that storyline. And he marched to move that storyline of slavery toward a more hopeful end. We hear his familiarity with that story in a speech written for the 1963 March on Washington. To paraphrase just slightly, give me the entry. Once upon a time, a promise was made with the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation, chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself an exile in his own land. Dr. King went on to say, and so we have come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. Can I cut across the field and provide you with a 21st century remix? Because I can hear King also sing. And so we've come here today to retell the story of an unfinished march and to inspire our visionaries and foot soldiers from all over the country to keep on marching till marching days are done. I know that can be a bit of a challenge in our modern day because there are some who quite frankly believe that our marching days are already done. I remember an occasion I had Congressman Scott to share with some of my colleagues in Harvard while working with Wyatt T. Walker in Harlem. They had what was known then and now as the Leadership Institute. It was a summer intensive. Mayor Price, I can recall, seated in one of those lecture halls on those hallowed grounds, a very renowned scholar, and I will not share their name, proceeded to lecture, and it troubled me so much throughout that lecture they kept making references to language that had to do with the post-civil rights era. Now, you and I both know what that suggests, as in post-Civil War, post. And it troubled me so because I had been working with folk like Wyatt T. Walker, who was Dr. King's chief of staff at SELC. I was on the board with Al Sharpton. We attended many meetings with Calvin Butts, who serves as the pastor of Abyssinia Baptist Church. And I can't tell you how many meetings we had with Congressman Charlie Rangel when he would return to Harlem and pull the clergy together. And none of them ever informed me that the movement had ended, that the march had concluded. And so I was confused and a little curious. And so following the lecture, I approached the individual and I said, you know, I've got an inquiring mind. I'm just wondering, when did the movement end? And they looked at me and responded by saying, well, Dr. Wills, I'm so sorry you were not aware of the prevailing scholarship, but the march ended when King died. Well, we're here today because we understand that the march is still alive and well. The fact is, we are closer to the finish line now than we were then, but we haven't crossed the finish line yet. And so somebody's got to keep on marching because an unfinished march never gets finished without marchers. And so we need marchers. We need movers and shakers, like those of us who are gathered here today, like Mayor Price, like Congressman Scott. I can go down the list. I hate to start naming names because I'm going to miss somebody. But movers and shakers, like the graduates of the Young Entrepreneurs Academy. Just got an email yesterday. I understand the Chamber of Commerce here in Peninsula is supporting their endeavor here in the state. These middle school and high school students who are creating, as young people, businesses and leading new social movements all across our nation by the tens of thousands. Marchers like my wife, who is the quintessential kindergarten teacher who teaches at McIntosh Elementary School, stays up every night till 1 o'clock in the morning preparing for her students, and then marches into that classroom every day to make sure that those young minds are prepared to take on the challenges of competing in a global economy. Folk who are marchers like the police officers that are here this morning, and firemen and dignitaries. Marchers like moms and dads who have worked long days but don't mind staying up and creating late night evenings so that their children will get the lesson and return to classrooms prepared to engage the conversation. We need marchers. We need marchers such as these. Marchers who are determined to not just talk the talk. Marchers like my friend and colleague, Dr. Howard, who walk the walk. We've got to keep on marching until marching days are over. Let me close this way. I like Congressman John Lewis's perspective on things. For those who thought the march ended in 2008, John Lewis announced that the election of President Obama was not an ending. It was not even a beginning. It was the continuation of a struggle begun centuries ago to build a beloved community of tolerance, of mutual acceptance, and a more perfect union of humanity. And so from this epicenter of this plaza, let's continue marching toward that place of socio-political perfection. Let us keep on marching together, children, and let us not get weary. Because you know what? I still believe that there's a promised land, a great camp meeting just beyond the finish line in that promised land. How about you?